Mackenzie Johnston with Tri-State Livestock News, bringing you discussions concerning fair cattle markets. Today we have the opportunity to chat with Mike Hollenbeck of Moult, Montana. He is a sheep and cattle rancher. Mike, to start off with, can you just tell me a little bit about your background and your involvement within the cattle industry?
My background is I've been a livestock order buyer for about 30 years now. We also ranch, and we run sheep and cattle. We also have just recently purchased a meat processing plant. Oh. So as we talk vertical integration, I feel like we're part of the cure or part of the problem. But we definitely, we fed a lot of cattle. We feed lambs out. We feed cattle out. And we've really been challenged by some of the things that are going on in the market. And this COVID pandemic hit us. We had an opportunity to buy a processing plant, and we moved ahead and did that.
Where in Montana are you located?
The processing plant is in Forsyth, Montana. Our ranching operation is in Moult, Montana.
What do you feel are some of the biggest issues standing in the way of fair cattle markets?
Having some mechanism or having something of substance that makes packers compete. Right now, we have no mechanism to make them compete. The regulation, size of company, whatever it might be, there's nothing there that forces them to compete like a free market system should. They don't sell at auction. They got huge supplies from a great big consumer of beef, a big consuming packer of beef, fills his needs and steps out of the market. There's nothing to do left for the market to do but go down because the smaller players can't absorb the volume. So we just don't have a mechanism to push a market higher. The long players aren't on the board to push it higher. We got a whole bunch of hedgers against the long players, and we got more hedgers trying to put in a break even or put in a small profit, so we have nobody to push that board higher.
There's been a lot of ideas tossed around on how to fix these markets. What do you think would be some viable solutions?
I think that the 50-14 would expose whether we can fix it. If we have implemented the 50-14 of Grassley and Testers, and we had a cash market that was transparent, and we still can't get profitable, then we have all got to look at vertical integration as our friend, not our enemy. I mean, because every time we buy a tool, we buy a truck, we hire an employee, we are actually vertically integrating our operation a little more. And so this goes on in every operation. It's just that we see the meat business as a big jump to vertical integration. But when a farmer, feeder, a rancher buys a new truck to haul his livestock to the market, he's eliminated a trucker and vertically integrated. So there's vertical integration. If it's for us, we're real quick to jump on it. But if it's against us, we're real quick to condemn it. And I'm finding myself torn in the middle where I've just bought a processing plant. That bottleneck is severe in this industry. The trucking, I made reference to the trucks. Well, hell, there's trucks everywhere. I'm going down the road here, bought some loads of cattle today. I can call 2 or 3 numbers and find a truck. But I've got 3 pens of cattle on the show list down in Nebraska today, and I can't get nobody to go look at it.
Have you had other issues getting bids on cattle besides now?
Oh, absolutely. It's just getting worse and worse and worse as time goes on.
So what are your thoughts on packer concentration within our industry?
Well, we're too concentrated to have a viable market. They do not have to compete against each other. And I think with the advent of all of the technology now, and USDA has been very good about trying to help us, but in the transparency of this information, the packer also knows who has just bought a whole bunch of cattle, so they know who's not going to be in the market. Mm-hmm. And once they know brand X isn't in the market, then they gauge how much they enter the market. And the longer they stay out of any given market, the better the chance with a perishable commodity like fat cattle are that it's going to go down.
What are your thoughts on MCOOL, mandatory country of origin labeling? Do you think there's a place in our industry for it?
Yes, I do. I very much am a proponent of mandatory country labeling. It mystifies me how we can have the packing industry against MCOOL, but yet for traceability of livestock. You got to have one or the other. You can't be against MCOOL and for traceability.
Speaking of traceability, what are your thoughts on USDA's proposed implementation of RFID tags by 2023?
I'm opposed to it. In my opening, I said we're also involved in the sheep business. Mm-hmm. We have a scrapie program where we got a mandatory ID tag in the sheep business already. And it doesn't work. They don't follow it. They fall out. It's hard to police. And the same thing will be true in the cattle business. I just think it's government overreach, and it does not change the taste of the end product. We're in the meat business, we're in the protein business, and that ear tag does not change the end product. It might change the perception of the end product, but it does not change the quality or the taste of the end product.
What are your overall thoughts on imports of beef and cattle?
Well, I think if we had mandatory country original labeling, if we had the MCOOL, the consumer would drive whether we need imports. If the imports were that much cheaper than the domestic product, we would find an equilibrium there. But right now, we're sneaking the import in as domestic product. And so the consumer doesn't have a chance to drive that market and influence the market.
Why did you and your family decide to purchase a small processing plant?
Well, I had a son that had been interested in quite a while. My son, Charlie, had been interested in that business for a while. And then we could see the consumer wasn't getting what they want. We, as a producer, we were up against a bull that couldn't get nothing through. I had cattle sitting on feed 30 days overdue that we couldn't get dead. And we just said, this is our opportunity to get in this business. And at that point in time, the packer was making $500-700 a head. Got to give credit to the packers. They weren't their numbers, so I don't know what the actual numbers are. But we did the math, and we said it's just that much per head. Why are we trying to make that much on a pen of cattle when we can make that much on one head?
What do you feel maybe some of the biggest challenges with that facility going forward?
The biggest challenge will be labor. Yeah. I think we got access to cattle, we got access to beef markets, we got access to land to expand. It's just going to be labor.
What are your thoughts on the current DOJ investigation into our big four beef processors? Do you think anything's going to come of that investigation?
I am hesitant to say yes, anything will come of it because of the track record that precedes it. We've had investigation on top of investigation, and it seems like they always get watered down where there's no action taken. Mm-hmm. So I am not overly optimistic that we're going to get a lot of positive results.
At the beginning of the conversation, you talked about how vertical integration might actually be our friend instead of our enemy. With that, do you think we'll see more smaller producers drop out of the game?
It's just back to in our area in Montana. I know of several of these small local processing plants that have changed hands since the pandemic. And all of them have went to ranch families. All of them went to ag families. So I can see these progressive families are vertically integrating. It's not necessarily going to put the small producer at a disadvantage. He just has to align himself with a smaller plant versus a big plant. Yeah. So I don't think they're at a disadvantage. I think if they've got a heritage breed of cattle, or they've got a breed of cattle that's lesser known than some of the majors, they can come with a branded product and determine their own destiny.
Do you think that's where our industry is headed, towards branded products, program cattle?
There's definitely a push there, And obviously, if we had mandatory country of origin labeling, we would be branded two products. It's either foreign product or it's domestic product. And for some reason, there's some major players in the industry that are opposed to that.
Are you facing the same issues in the sheep industry that we're seeing in the cattle industry?
Well, we lost a packer in the sheep industry this summer, but we picked up three of them upon losing one. And our lamb market was post-COVID there in March and April. It was terrible. And it's rebounded nicely with the export of some lamb to Canada and reopening an old plant in San Angelo, reopening a new plant in Colorado. We've got a pretty robust lamb market right now with the addition of some more packers. So when you add some packers, this market has the ability to come alive.
There's currently a petition circulating to bring about a beef checkoff referendum. What are your thoughts on that situation and the beef checkoff overall?
My thoughts on the checkoff are no different than our politicians. The checkoff has been turned into a political football, and all our politicians have to run for re-election. The incumbent has an advantage, and I think the checkoff needs to be revisited and revoted on and to be held accountable. And my deal with these red meat checkoffs are the lamb people have a checkoff, the beef have a checkoff, the goats don't, and the goats are by far the highest priced meat in the marketplace. That being said, there's something to be said for not having a checkoff. So people stand on their own 2 feet, promote their own product.
Do you think this referendum will come about? Do you think enough folks are going to sign the petition?
I think if the petition carriers will get the signatures if they ask for them. There's enough of a push in cow-calf country that not everybody that signed the petition is against the checkoff, but definitely they feel like it should be visited.
Do you have any closing statements you'd like to make?
I think from, flying over this thing 10,000 feet above it and looking over the landscape of the land, I think that the consumer has changed post-COVID forever. There's going to be some change in the cattle industry because of it. The cattle industry is going to evolve to something different because of this pandemic. It is going to change.
How so? How we produce beef and how we market it to the consumer?
I think the consumers' buying habits have changed. So that's going to mean our packaging and our merchandising habits are going to have to change. And once that stuff changes, it's probably going to trickle back to some production is going to change. But I do think that the consumer is more vigilant. They're a lot more careful about how they're spending their dollar and what they're spending their dollar on. And that just pushes me more toward the M-Cool and giving that consumer a choice.